All right, let's do a way too early look at the top 25 for 2020 and all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. And today I want to take a way too early look at the top 25, taking a look at what CBS Sports came up with, Yahoo Sports, ESPN, and yes, of course, I took a look at Sports Illustrated because Pat Forty wrote it, and we talk about the other stuff later. Before we get to that, I want to remind you that I am sponsoring dodgeball tournament in Owasso, which is just outside of Tulsa. It's a suburb if you're in the area. February 29th. There's a link in the description below where you can sign up with your 6-member team. Gonna have 2 brackets, gonna have 2 sessions. Y'all can get this work if you want this work. I hit you with this dodgeball right in the face. You can dodge a wrench, but you can't dodge this ball coming at your face. Come get this work for charity. That's what we're about, because one of the cool things about this channel is being able to do charitable works, and I'm enjoying that. And there's other stuff that we're planning to do later on in 2020. 2020 is going to be a lot of fun. You are a big part of that just by clicking the thumbnail and watching. I mean, that helps. But if you really want to be a part of it in a meaningful way with badges and responses from me and a little deeper insight into how things work and some say-so over what goes up on this channel, become a member. There is a button just below this video where you can join up. 99 cents a month, right? You probably spent 99 cents on who knows what. You go to a Dollar General store, you get you a soda. I'm asking that you just buy a soda, right? 99 cents a month, $5 a month, $9.99. If you really want to give me your Netflix subscription, I would appreciate it. But also, we give it back, right? We pay it forward because that's part of this channel. We have Christian values here, and it's a big part of how I was raised and who I am. And so much good has happened to me. I am obligated and just overjoyed to do that with you. Now, let's talk about the top 25. Okay, so Clemson is the number 1 team in the country, according to some. I can understand why you would say that with the return of Trevor Lawrence. Even as T. Higgins is going to the NFL draft, it ain't like they ain't got dudes back there. Number 1 recruiting class in the country. They signed the number 2 overall prospect at quarterback, right? The number 1 guy being Brian Brzee. Oh, my goodness. So it's very clear what Clemson has decided to do. They're going to sign the best quarterback they possibly can, and they're going to sign half of the top 6 defensive linemen in the country. 3 of the top 6 are coming to Clemson. If you got an outstanding defensive line, you got a capable quarterback, you can win a lot of games in college football. We saw that with Clemson just getting their 29 straight win streak snapped in the national championship. They have made the national final 5 times dating back to 2015, and they have won 2 out of the last 4 national championships. I understand why you would see that, but I could also understand how you feel good about Ohio State. Justin Fields is returning. He's a Heisman finalist. Yes, they're losing Chase Young. Yes, they're losing J.K. Dobbins. But it ain't like Master Teague is some punk. Master Teague can run the football. And it ain't like Sax Harrison ain't going to be there. That dude be good. And all they've done is reload. Julian Fleming's going to be an absolute monster at this level. I can't wait to watch him play. And their class has been ridiculous. And all they've done is continue to put out DB after DB after DB. Yes, they lose Jeff Okudah, but you're going to lose a top 10 pick. They also got dudes coming through. I'm excited to see what Justin Fields is able to summon in 2020 because, man, they were this close to being one of the best teams in college football ever, and now we just need to talk about them as one of the best teams to ever be assembled because that run that they were on, the teams that they beat and the way that they beat them, we might never see that again, or we might see it this year. Alabama at number 3 for Dennis Dodd, CBS Sport. I kind of got a problem with that, but I also understand because you're losing so much to the NFL draft. You're losing your top wide receiver in Jerry Jeudy. You're losing your second best wide receiver in Henry Ruggs. You're losing Xavier McKinney in your defensive backfield. But you also got Mac Jones coming back, and he's got tremendous experience. I believe in Bryce Young. If you've heard him on the mic, you'll believe in him too. The top dual threat quarterback in the 2020 class. That was a guy that Lincoln Riley really, really wanted. Didn't get. It's not as if you're not going to have dudes back there with him. Najee Harris is going to stay in school, so that's huge. You also get right back into the mix with Dylan Moses at linebacker, along with raising up Schein and raising up Christian Harris. Patrick Surtain Jr. is a monster. I think they're going to be really good. At number 4, we're talking about LSU for Dennis Dodd. I think they could flip-flop at number 3 there, even number 2, depending on how you feel about it. But losing Joe Burrow is not a small thing. But even if it was, losing Justin Jefferson is not a small thing either. Losing Grant Delpit is not a small thing. You return Derek Stingley Jr., and he's likely to be the best player on that football team next year. But, I mean, Jamar Chase, oh man, what he was able to do in 2019 was just flat filthy. What Pat Queen turned into was just flat filthy. I mean, I can only imagine how dangerous that team would have been if Michael Divinity would have been eligible for the entire season. But more than that, you're losing Joe Brady, your passing game coordinator. I understand LSU fans are like, yo, Steve Ensminger called the plays. Yeah, sort of. He had veto power. But the guy doing the game planning and the guy talking on the headset and the guy going, when Steve Ensminger said we want to pass here, the guy actually going into Madden and pulling up the sheet and going, yo, in Madden, this is what we would do. I'm using Madden as a reference here because everybody plays Madden, not because he's actually going to play Madden to do this. I'm using it as reference to say, it's one thing to say go pass the football. It's another thing to say run 4 verticals versus run mesh. All right? It's just that different. Now, elevating Jorge Munoz is going to help you because Jorge Munoz was also able to teach Joe Brady how to be an assistant coach in a meaningful way in college football, but also because it just keeps everything in-house. And he understood how that system worked, and he'll be able to work with Steve Ensminger, and Ed Orgeron is an elite recruiter, and you'll be able to recruit around that. The question that I have about LSU is whether or not Miles Brennan is going to be good enough to run it back, and I'm not sure, especially with De'Aaron King on the market. Can't wait to see what goes on there. Oklahoma's number 5 to Dennis Dodd. I think a lot of that is contingent on Spencer Rattler and what he is able to do in 2020. You also get this new wave coming through, of which Spencer Rattler is a part of. New wave is the 2019 class that was vaunted at Oklahoma. It includes Rattler, the number 1 wide receiver in the country that year, Jaden Hazelwood, Theo Weiss, who's number 2. You get Trajan Bridges back after suspension, we think, because Lincoln Riley has not been definitive about how long his suspended players are going to stay suspended. Those 3 being Bridges, Ramondre Stevenson, and Ronnie Perkins. But you also are going to be without Kenneth Murray Jr., your top leading tackler, averaged over 100 tackles a year for 3 years at Oklahoma. You're going to be without CeeDee Lamb, who is sure to be a first-round draft pick. It's only a question about whether or not he's going to go in the top 10 or slide into the next 22. So I could see this, but I also really love Florida right now, man. I mean, what Dan Mullen has with the return of Kyle Trask, with getting another year of Emory in there, I know that you're going to lose C.J. Henderson. I know that Jabari Zuniga did not have the year that you wanted him to have, but I still think it's going to be a big loss. They recruited well. They've assembled what they need to compete in the SEC East, and if you can come out of the SEC East, you have an opportunity to win the SEC Championship against what is going to be a just murderer's row of 7 teams in the SEC West that I am so excited about. The SEC West is the most outstanding division in football right now, and I kind of want it to be its own conference because I've never seen this kind of coaching talent assembled together in one division, let alone one league before. Outstanding. Now, I think one of the slips in here, because just getting ahead, is Georgia, right? But we'll get to Georgia here in a second. Oregon is number 7 for Dodd. This is even after they have to break in a new quarterback with Justin Herbert, and they're losing their offensive coordinator and Marcus Arroyo to UNLV. I know that they just hired Joe Moorhead to come over and do that, and I understand he was really good at Penn State, but it's going to need some moving and shaking to be done here because who you have at quarterback for Oregon feels just as important as knowing that defense is going to be legit, man. Noah Sewell is a monster. Justin Flo is a monster. Kayvon Thibodeau is a monster. And they're going to run the Pac-12 North, and they're probably going to run it back as the Pac-12 champs. I'm excited to see what the Ducks look like this year under Mario Cristobal, who is turning Oregon into a kind of SEC power in the the Pacific West. He's got Auburn at number 8. Because of the return of Bo Nix, even though I don't know that Bo Nix was that great of a prospect coming into the college ranks, but I also saw it, like you saw it. I mean, asking Bo Nix to win you a football game throwing the football ain't a good recipe for wins, and Auburn learned that against Minnesota. So I don't know why we got them ranked ahead of Georgia here. I got a problem with this, but I would have had Georgia ranked inside my top 5 right now too because of what they were able to pick up Jamie Newman. Now, That is where we get to with Georgia at number 9. Kirby Smart is going to have to rebuild something. I understand that. You lost DeAndre Swift. You lost Andrew Thomas. You're losing J.R. Reed. All three of those dudes, including Jake Fromm, are outstanding talents. And I know that Georgia fans feel like Jake Fromm was just an everyman. Anybody could have done what he did. I don't agree with that. I would say Jamie Newman gives you an added dimension that allows you to take advantage of his legs in a way that you just don't with Jake Fromm. He led the ACC in total offense by a player at Wake Forest. I feel like James Coley is allowed to open up the playbook a little bit and let Jamie Newman cook with the return of George Pickens and Dominique Blaylock possibly making it back from injury. You got opportunity to just be really good out there offensively. And that's the only thing holding Georgia back right now. It's not even the personnel. It's not the recruiting. It's not any of that. It's scheme. Look at what LSU did. They flipped the scheme and they put together one of the best seasons in college football history. I need Kirby Smart to pull it out and go do what they did, man. And by pull it, I mean pull his head out. Pull his head out his rear end on this one because I think he's just being hard-headed. I understand. Y'all got hats to say run the damn ball down there in Athens because I was there for the Notre Dame game at Sanford and I enjoyed it, but I was going, yo, man, are you going to let Jake Fromm cook? Because if Jake Fromm was allowed to cook, I feel like you wouldn't have lost the games that you lost, all right? I think you're in the SEC championship game with an opportunity to go blow for blow with this LSU team. Just let James Coley call more pass plays. Don't even have to change it into the RPO scheme like the one that they ran at LSU. Just let your quarterback cook. Number 10, he's got Notre Dame. I understand that because Ian Book's return gives you a healthy advantage. I also love the development of Kyle Hamilton. I know Aloy Gilman is going into the NFL draft, but it's not anything to sneeze at what they were able to do, which is 2 losses last year. Elevating Tommy Rees to offensive coordinator, I think helps you with your continuity. Feels like Tommy Rees was throwing footballs around not too long ago. But Notre Dame is Notre Dame, even as, it's the team that most people love to hate, except the Subway alumni and, of course, the people that went there. But Ian Book gives you an advantage because when Ian Book is out in space and running around, Notre Dame is offensively at its best. Kyle Hamilton has an opportunity to be one of the best defensive backs in the country next year. Keep your eye on him. He got out of Georgia to Notre Dame. I'm excited about them. Minnesota and PJ Fleck are at number 11 for him. The Gophers won 11 games for the first time since 1903. That's not a small thing. They also lost the offensive coordinator to Penn State, which we'll get to here in just a second. But I also really think that returning Tanner Morgan, almost slipped there. Tanner Morgan and Rashad Bateman is going to help you tremendously on the outside. Antoine Winfield went into the NFL draft. We expected that. He was one of the better defensive backs in all the country last year. Minnesota has an opportunity to compete in the Big Ten West with a little bit of a lull with Wisconsin, but we'll see what this means with Iowa and so forth moving forward. Dodd has Penn State at number 12. I would have agreed with that until the lawsuit was brought to light that alleged heinous hazing charges against James Franklin and some of his players by Isaiah Humphries, who is a Cal defensive back now. Read the lawsuit. You'll see these are things that most parents would ball up their fist about and go fight. So it's open to question as to whether or not James Franklin is even coaching at Penn State next year because they can't have this kind of a scandal after what happened 9 years ago with Jerry Sandusky. They need to be swift. They need to get to the bottom of this because we're also talking about guys like Micah Parsons who were allegedly involved in the hazing of this player, Isaiah Humphries. So they also have a new offensive coordinator on the football side of things. I'm not prepared to say that Penn State's even going to be a top 25 program at this time, but I understand why you might include them based on what they were able to do last year. He's got A&M at number 13. Jimbo Fisher needs to start earning that $75 million contract, dog, because I get that winning a Texas Bowl is a big deal to some, but at A&M, they were expecting to compete for national championships, and they ain't done that since Jimbo Fisher got the reins. And coming out of the SEC West, it ain't looking like it's going to get any easier. Like beating up on Oklahoma State in the Texas Bowl ain't going to win you any favor with Texas A&M fans, especially with the recruiting classes that you put together. Because you're running into a predicament where you're about to start to look like the Texas Longhorns who feel like they can recruit with the best in the country but just can't make it work on the football field. And for perspective here, Texas and Texas A&M both finished 8-5, which shows you how they deserve each other. They should redo that rivalry again, like play it again. But right now, you're not getting what you asked for if you're an ampersand U fan, and Jimbo Fisher needs to get it right in a hurry in what I think is the toughest division in football. Michigan at number 14. The ceiling is the ceiling. The ceiling is Ohio State. until Michigan can beat Ohio State, we're still going to talk about Jim Harbaugh as being a pretty good coach who can't get it done at Michigan. I know he does not want that to be his legacy, but it's going to be his legacy until he gets a W, because it is a nationally televised rivalry game, and to many people, it's the biggest rivalry in the sport. It ain't like Mike Gundy taking straight up L's to Oklahoma and Lincoln Riley all the time. People forget Lincoln Riley has more Bedlam wins than Mike Gundy does, and he's only been coaching at Oklahoma for 3 years. But you're not going to get dragged at Oklahoma State the way that you're going to get dragged at Michigan. It just ain't going to happen. You need to put it together, especially when you've been able to recruit the way you've been able to recruit. You got one of our own and Dax Hill already there. You need to make it work. At 14, I think that's probably where they're going to finish after what they were able to do this year. I mean, we're talking about a team that averages 9.4 wins a year under Jim Harbaugh. Tells you a lot about their record. Wisconsin at number 15, I think that's a rosy outlook after the Rose Bowl and losing Jonathan Taylor. You're going to need your next tailback to be just as good, if not better, to really come out of the Big Ten West and expect to win the Big Ten championship game. And all Jonathan Taylor did was rush for damn near 2,000 yards. No, I think he rushed more than 2,000 yards. And we're also talking about a dude that's rushed for more yards in 3 years than anybody else in the history of the sport. So, Paul Chryst, your ceiling is, again, the Big Ten championship, because you could come out of the Big Ten West. Nobody would bet against you on that. Nobody would bet against you not beating Iowa or Minnesota to get there. But can you go and win the big one against an Ohio State team that is running the Big Ten? Louisville at number 16. I could get behind that. Scott Satterfield with an outstanding turnaround in year one, going 8-5 with a good win in his bowl game against Mississippi State. Bowl game got Joe Moorhead fired. I like it, man. They're quirky little run offense. I enjoyed it at Appalachian State. I enjoy it at Louisville. I can't wait to watch it. Texas at number 17. Do or die season for Texas and the Longhorns at this point. We're talking about Tom Herman, who is in year 4 of this and has already had to fire both of his coordinators and completely throw out his power spread for which he got the job for which was the spread that won him the national championship when he was offensive coordinator for Urban Meyer at Ohio State. He's gone back to the Ohio State well, hiring the defensive coordinator who was there with him when they won a national championship in 2014. Look, you need to make it work with Sam Hargy Ellinger. You need to make it work with those trees at wide receiver, Brendan Eagles, Malcolm Epps. You need to make it work with Gatorade Player of the Year in Arizona, Jake Smith, Daniel Young back there, Keontae Ingram back there, Roshan Johnson back there. You need to make it work with one of the better defensive backs in all of college football and Caden Stearns. Otherwise, you're going to get your walking papers. You have another 7-5 season. It's liable to be you that gets fired and not your coordinators. At number 18, he's got Luke Fickell in Cincinnati. I can kind of get behind that. You know, they're picking up a transfer from Alabama and a tailback, and that's what they do. They run the ball and they play defense, and that got them into the conference championship game against a Memphis team that just was a little bit better than they were. But Marcus Freeman, as defensive coordinator, is a rising star in this industry. Can't wait to see what it looks like when he's a head coach. I really love their defense. I like the Bearcats. Number 19, Memphis. I get that you want to dock them because Mike Norvell is now the head coach of Florida State, but it ain't like they're not returning a bunch of the dudes that were playing this year, and they're the defending conference champs, and they played tight with Penn State up until, midway through the third quarter, and then it got out of hand. Got a little bit out of hand. But I would flip-flop that. I would have Memphis in front of Cincinnati. Boise State at 20. I like what they did this year, man. Brian Harsin actually had it humming along with a true freshman quarterback in Hank Bachmeier, and then he goes down. They still managed to win a Mountain West title. I like it. I like him at 20. At Iowa, we got number 21. We got Iowa. Kurt Ferentz continues to just outkick whatever it is they're recruiting. Also a dude that doesn't think that, we need to expand the playoff and that the national championship is that big a deal. That's because you're not playing in it, Kurt. So if you were playing in it, I think you would have some more feelings about it. But you've also been able to hang on to the job at Iowa for an extremely long amount of time. And you've been able to turn dudes like Nate Stanley into winners. And AJ Epinesa is going. Epinesa. Yeah. AJ Epinesa. Defensive end at Iowa. He's going to go in the NFL draft, probably a top 10 pick. He also had George Kittle play at Iowa. We know what kind of a program he runs there. It's class. It's awesome. They're just every once in a while going to come out of the Big Ten West and then get handed their head in the Big Ten championship. At number 22, Central Florida. Dylan Gabriel threw 29 touchdowns, 3,600 yards passing his first year as starting quarterback underneath Josh Heupel. They quietly put together a 10-win season. Central Florida can jump up and bite you. They'll challenge in the American. It used to be their conference not just a year ago. There's no reason to believe it can't be their conference again. Baylor at number 23, even with no coach and with no Charlie Brewer, we think they have tremendous continuity coming back. Losing James Lynch on the defensive line is obviously going to hurt. And then we're watching Graylin Arnold go into the NFL draft. But depending on who the coach is, maybe it's Justin Fuente, maybe it's not. I think Baylor at 23 is a little bit of a reach, but I could respect it at 23. Arizona State at 24. I liked Arizona State like 7 spots earlier than this. I know they're losing Eno Benjamin to the NFL draft, but Herm Edwards is not satisfied with knocking off Oregon. And he's not satisfied with having a really good program humming right along out there. Jaden Daniels is going to come back. They're going to modify the offense. They're going to go to something that's a little bit more modern. They're going to have an outstanding tailback. They're going to have great skill players. They're going to be well coached. I wouldn't be surprised to watch Arizona State finish inside the top 20 this time next year. And then at 25, he's got North Carolina, who I think is going to be sneaky good. I could easily see North Carolina ending up inside the top 15, man, ahead of a Louisville, right? With Sam Howell returning, with Jay Bateman at defensive coordinator, with Phil Longo at offensive coordinator, and what they were able to do with their recruiting this year. Mac Brown's going to surprise some people. I think that's the second best team in the ACC today. Obviously, you have opinions about this. Please let me know in the comments below. Deuces.